All right, well, I think maybe we can slowly begin the webinar as the last of you join. I'll invite the rest of the panelists to join the discussion as well and then turn on their webcams. I think it's best if you see us while we present. And well, what are we here to discuss? So community management, pretty critical today. We have struggled for quite a moment, and I think there couldn't be a more important time to speak about this. But of course, let's introduce ourselves and who we are. So we got Sarma, our social media specialist. Sarma, do you want to take a second to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Sarma. I'm the social media specialist at Social Bakers, and I'm doing the community management for our company. And if you slide into our DMs, chances are I will answer your question or reply to your tweet or comments. So that's how we can keep in touch.
Yeah, then we have our superhero, Elisa, from the product marketing team.
Hey, that was a weird wave, but okay. I'm a product marketing manager, and I'm responsible for creation of the messaging for our products.
And I am Mantis, I head of the content team, and I don't know what I'm doing here. I think I'm just here facilitating a conversation between you two. I'll promise to do my best. And I'm here to also answer all the questions, and together we want to answer all your questions. So really take the time to drop the questions in the Q&A, in the chat as well. Whatever you prefer, we will answer them, and we'll answer them through the course of this presentation. I'm just going to ask the team. I am unable to open the Q&A, but maybe one of you can and just follow the comments there.
Yeah, absolutely. I have it open.
Perfect. I can check the chat. So a little bit kind of maybe if we can go through the agenda today. So Elisa, do you mind just walking us through what we're going to cover here?
Yes, absolutely. So, of course, we will discuss like what's the context of our today's discussion, what's the community management, especially in these very challenging times, what's the difference with business as usual, and we will go through each phase which defines the community management, which is listening, engagement, and oversight, and we'll highlight the main things that you should pay attention to right now.
Perfect. There's one little bit of kind of housekeeping note, and this is a crucial one. This is probably the most important note from the webinar, is that when you're responding in the chat, where you see the to tab, just change it from just panelists to all panelists and attendees. What's going to happen is that we're all going to participate in this chat together, and there's going to be so much more fun for everyone, and we're going to be able to see our questions. So yes. I see one question already coming in. Right. So
yeah,
one
absolutely.
Question is,
the presentation will be available later on. Yes, absolutely. You will receive one.
Yeah, and the recording as well. All right. So we're just going to dive into it. Well, we want to start with a quick poll. So what kind of a setup are you working in as community managers? A, you have several people working. B, you have a community manager dedicated to your brand, and C, you're sharing multiple duties, you're scheduling posts. Sarma, a little bit kind of like what you're doing, I suppose.
Yeah, I would answer C for Social Bakers.
So we have a couple of C's. Yeah, we got A's, B, C. Wow, there's a wide range of
spectrum. Wow, yeah, we have a lot. Very good.
Yeah.
But in any sort of scenario, community manager is a jack of all trades, so you have to be on top of too many tasks sometimes. If it's written that you're responsible just for this.
Well, I think the point is that we want this webinar to be tailored to most of you. So we're going to try to cover a wide range of different topics that will be relevant for most, I hope. So diving into the topic, and that is the context. What is the context? So I think, Elisa, you found this GIF.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a super famous one, and I've seen a lot of community managers sharing this one as like a point of reference of how the things are looking right now. And to be frank, it was exactly like this for a lot of people over there, but community managers were really on the frontier of this battle, and they did tremendous really. And to stay calm, to stay focused in a times like this is superpower.
Yeah. So Sarma, I imagine it was maybe similar situation, or was it a little bit different for social bakers?
Yeah, for social bakers, since we're not one of the industries that was so heavily hit, we didn't experience such crazy times. But I would say that now it was a global crash course on crisis management for all the marketers, for all the social media managers, for all the community managers, because most of the people working now, they haven't experienced like anything like it, not just talking about a global pandemic, but just a crisis that is hitting their company very hard. And if a couple of years ago there was, a huge difference in levels of experience, people who are working in the industry like 15, 20 years, they had like a head start. But I think now we are all kind of, moving more on a similar level experience wise, dealing with very, very difficult times.
Yeah, it's a kind of a round of applause to really everyone managing communities during this time. We actually have a nice kind of quote. At least I think you found this one, right?
Yeah, this is really powerful, and I believe this describes the situation at its fullest. And everything needs to be revisited in a real time to make sure you aren't being tone deaf. And it was so much importance to be aligned with situation, to be on top of every topic. And brands had amazing opportunity to really show who they are and what their values. Because let's be honest, it was not only about answering the disturbed messages from the people who need to understand what's going on. It was something different. And this time community management created this bond between brands and people. And this is why it's so important.
Yeah, we actually, I think, have data that shows how crazy it was in different industries during this time. So obviously, airlines receiving just tons of, community interactions and tons of questions and queries, and of course other verticals like finance and telco industry. So any sort of odd businesses that stand out there?
No, I like the difference though, like between total posts. For example, airlines receive the total interactions, like it was tremendous amount, but the total post was not that big. And it's obvious that they were trying to keep the communication as shy as possible, I would say, in order not to create too much discussions around it. So there were good examples and not that successful examples, and we will also share.
Yeah, we'll get to them
later. Yeah.
Actually, some of the examples that you talk about, and of course, we want to highlight some of the ones where just really, I think, maybe we're touching and really just solid community management all around. And just maybe to zero in on some of them. The one from Starbucks, I love this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are not pointing a finger at anyone because it was very hard times for every brand, but it's amazing how some brands were just really on the top of every discussion. And as this example show, Starbucks managed to be really human, when for some people going to Starbucks, it became a highlight of their day, and they're saying it's silly, and Starbucks is replying like, it doesn't sound silly to us, guys. We're all in this together. And they create so much of a family home atmosphere in their communication, which is really, really good, And there are other things how you can manage this, how you can leverage from these discussions, from these conversations.
Yeah, there's another example that you included from an airline, obviously a hugely affected industry.
Absolutely. Not all of them managed it quite well. However, I did enjoy the approach that Wizz Air took, and they used individual approach mixed with answer templates, because obviously in this case, answer templates were a huge help because you cannot possibly remember all the information. So they were just first wave, they were answering with template saying there where people can find the information. However, later on, they were picking up the discussion and being really, really personal for their people. They were not saying, oh, call us in 2 weeks. No, they were finding their ticket numbers, that they were replying and updating what's going on with their query, and even saying, as in this example, so guys, you have to wait, but if in 2 weeks nobody will pick up this conversation, please text here and I will pick up this conversation. So people were really responsible for every reply they were giving.
Yeah, and we'll get back to the conversation about templates and how to kind of use them right later, but it's an important one.
Yeah.
Netflix.
I mean, do it with humor, right? This is the best we can do these days.
Yeah.
And also here, I would add that it's always great to also not only interact with fans, but also interact with other accounts or other brands, because it just creates a wonderful experience for the people who enjoy both companies or both brands, and it brightens everyone's day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's a time for you as a brand is supposed to put yourself in the same position that your community is. Essentially, you're trying to be one of them and trying to empathize and be human and use humor.
Yeah.
Next example, right? I love this one.
Yeah. Put your fans first, and again, this is hard for brands. However, they need to show their followers that fans comes first, and their needs and their money safe and their interests are on the first place. Because once the brands start to saving themselves, it's quite obvious, it's very easy to notice, and it doesn't look good for a community. So you need to keep people loyal at all costs, because this is your major asset.
Yeah, this is the time for loyal customers to be loyal customers are right now what really going to get you through this crisis. So
absolutely,
get to them, find out who they are in your community.
Yeah, and it's also like I love this one, because it's about seizing opportunity. Sometimes you can do amazing social job, like for example this Giorgio Armani post. However, and he received so much response, like every comment was absolutely amazing, tons of love received this post, but they didn't reply to any of those. And this is sad, because it's such an amazing opportunity to engage with the community and to actually show how much you appreciate people being in this together. So even though I really, really love the post and I really love the move, I would prefer to see way more engagement from the side of the brand in this particular case.
Yeah, likewise, agreed. It actually kind of paid off for the brands to really be a part of this conversation, and maybe paid off is not the right word, but there was a community could relate to it. They really responded in a positive way to whatever brands are doing, and we saw a huge increase in love reactions over the course of March for many brands. So yeah, definitely a time to connect and empathize with people.
Absolutely. It became very personal. Every discussion switched the focus from the product to the community itself, to the bond that the people have with the brand. And I think this is very important to remember, that in the times of crisis, you're not selling things, you're selling the value of who you are.
Yeah. And of course, feel free to share your experiences in the chat, like where you, was it a challenging time like it was for everyone? Were you able to connect with the audience? Of course, community management is a challenge. It was always a challenge. It's not like it was just a challenge during this one period in time. And this is kind of anecdotal evidence to support this claim. We ran a campaign. I think this was the end of the year 2019, if we remember that year. And we kind of highlighted the social media, let's say, user of the Social Bakers platform who responded to most direct messages, and just that number, 20,853, is a lot. I think, Sarma, you did a quick calculation.
Yeah, I run the math, and it's 80 messages a day. And obviously, we don't know how difficult those messages were, but definitely it is something that keeps you busy.
Yeah, do you guys
Absolutely.
a lot? I don't know. For me, it sounds like a crazy number, but maybe for some seasoned community managers among the attendees, maybe this is a totally reasonable number of messages to process.
It really depends. At the end of the day, it depends on what the people are asking, because no day is ever, no 2 days you're doing community management are the same.
Yeah, Patrick is saying that he receives 70 messages per day and only one social media person in our team. Ouch.
This could be you.
Respect. We take off our hats.
Yeah. And well, there's the reason, we have to return to why we do this. And we do this to create amazing experiences for our community. The reason why we put in so much effort and we come to work every day. And Sarma, I'm sure you come to work every day. I personally really enjoyed it in my time when it was when I had the chance to interact with the community at Social Bakers. I loved it.
It is amazing, but now we have the slide in front of us. This is a really nice list, so keep in mind. It's obviously not something I have put on my wall, as you can see, but since working with social media can be very mentally exhausting, and sometimes at the end of the day you feel, oh, I just scroll through Twitter the whole day, and you feel kind of no sense of fulfillment. Then it's really nice to go back to this list, to revisit it, and understand and remember that whatever you're doing on social media, it's you're being a great ambassador for the brand. You're really showing in real life how the brand looks like. You're portraying the brand values and making the buzz around your brand, building relationships with fans and followers and other brands maybe. So it's really, at the end of the day, it's really, really fulfilling if you look, seek the deeper value of what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we have to get to the practical part of the presentation. And this is where really, I think, if you have any questions, start asking them along the way. We want to cover each of these sections in greater detail. And this is where we'll go into a bit of the details of how to organize things, how to set up things from a tool-wise perspective. But Elisa, can you just briefly walk us through these 3 steps before we dive into them?
Absolutely. This is obviously a simplified version, and every business is different, so your workflow might be completely different or slightly different. However, there are usually 3 phases. It's listening, engagement, and oversight, which is pretty common for everybody. And a listening part, you track the conversation beyond social, you detect ups and downs in conversational trends. Then it's amazing but very challenging part of engagement, of replying the comments, tagging different people who's the right people who know the answer if you don't know the answer, and of course identify and nurture key advocates and conversations, because this is also like quite important, obviously. However, you don't ever forget about the reporting side of things, because you need to spot the trending topics around your channel and obviously analyze and oversee agent performance, and to have actually reports running on a frequent basis, so you can benchmark yourself towards yourself in a proper timing, in order to understand what's the difference, because in just 1 week, as we already seen it happening, things can change very fast, and you need to adapt.
Okay, so let's dive into those sections in greater detail. And I hope the metaphor is clear. This is the listening section. This is where it begins. Well, why do we list it? Well, we need to know what the vibes are just in general. This is the kind of the obvious part. And obviously, as you listen to what those vibes are, you kind of looking at a bunch of different metrics to build a picture of that general kind of feeling in your community, and where are the maybe critical areas to address, where maybe you can kind of relax a little bit. And probably, I don't know, Sarma, am I not mistaking? Is it sentiment that's really kind of the critical one, or is it critical one for you?
Sentiment definitely is something that kind of tracking sentiment makes my daily routine a bit easier. Because yeah, as you know, and as you saw from all the responses we got, we are a pretty international company, meaning that when I sleep, it doesn't mean that nobody talks about us or messages us. So every morning when I log on, I could actually show how it looks like, right?
Yeah. So let me just I can quickly show the platform, just a second.
Yeah, and I start sharing my screen to show how the community looks like.
Okay, let me just I'll let you share your screen.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing your screen, right?
Yeah, it should be like that. So the thing that makes my life a bit easier when I wake up every morning and log onto my computer is that I check for this red spot right here. So the sentiment analysis and does it automatically and highlights the messages that might have a negative sentiment to it. So what it means for a community manager, it means that I can, start responding to the messages that maybe are fires that need to be extinguished. Maybe something has happened, and it's so easy to spot some areas where you could really need to action on ASAP, because things like that happen. And especially if you're an international company, something can happen during the night and you might not notice. I can share that a couple of weeks ago, I woke up to a lot of messages and a lot of interactions from the Americas, and those messages were even in Portuguese or Spanish, and I didn't understand what's happening, and they were all marked red, but it just turned out that we were involved in a conversation by accident, sort of. Nobody was trash talking us, but seeing all that red stuff in the morning was very, very
better than coffee, right?
It was definitely very kind of a splash of cold water. So yeah, the sentiment analysis part is great in that sense to really help you understand where you should focus on, because normally, yeah, you tackle the messages chronologically, but if there's something that really stands out, and if you have, as one of the viewers mentioned, 70 messages a day, then it really makes a difference if you can spot the bad stuff straight on.
Absolutely. And also, like, you can create a separate feed over there just for the negative comments. So this will be literally the first thing in the morning. You don't need to filter anything. It's just over there for you to do just first minute.
That's actually how I kind of have it set up here. And I have a bit of a anecdote. Maybe it's not an anecdote, but back when I was more involved in social media.
I told you it was not funny. It's a very cruel thing to do.
So I'm going to share this with the audience, because if there are any managers watching, so there's one use case. So what Sarma has been talking about, where you can instantly kind of sort all comments by type of sentiment. So what kind of happened at some point that my manager has essentially sorted all feeds by negative sentiment, and every morning I would get messages of what posts haven't been addressed directly. So, there's an oversight thing to this as well if you're a manager watching. But eventually, hey, I set up my feed exactly the same way, and I was able to get to those messages first, and that was cleared up.
Yeah. If you're interested in micromanagement, yeah, there are tools that can help you with that. I don't advise it ever to anyone, though.
Well, if you micromanage, at least do it like a pro.
Yeah, do the style.
So obviously, sentiment, pretty critical, helps you identify the key areas you need to address quickly. Reactions, I guess, more self-explanatory. Sarma, is there something to add here that the audience should know?
Yeah, reactions can work the same way. If you see negative response to something that you have posted, then maybe it's worth to revisit. Maybe, you know, you didn't think it through. Maybe it's a joke that offended someone. You know, it happened to a lot of brands right now. When the virus first hit the world, then if you didn't revisit your content calendars and just what was scheduled went out, then I believe a lot of companies, you know, didn't filter it out and let happy stuff be published, or some photos or videos where people are clearly not doing social distancing. Then yeah, checking reactions can also be help to really see and evaluate whatever you're posting. Maybe it's not only the positive aspect, but also the negative aspect of it. Yeah.
Right. There's actually a question coming in from the audience that maybe we have to go back a bit to the sentiment part of it. So what are the metrics of tracking sentiment? So it's pretty straightforward. There's negative sentiment, there's neutral sentiment, and there's positive sentiment. And
It's not that straightforward anymore. I mean, soon we will have like all the spectrum of different sentiments, and going from very happy face attached to the sentiment to the very sad one and very angry one. So we are trying to go even beyond the understanding of like three-dimensional understanding of sentiments. And also worth mentioning that if we're talking about social bakers, the AI sentiment analysis is very solid. It's about 83%, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty much the same as a human can do, because not all of us can agree if the sentiment is positive or negative, even being a human. So our AI is actually one of the market leaders, and it's something reliable, because it's also very important to understand, even if you're using automatic sentiment, you need to understand how you can rely on that, because if it's only 40-60% accuracy, that might be an actual problem, and you need to revisit all the sentiment attached. Whilst we have amazing feedback so far from our sentiment analysis.
All right. Well, back to the other metrics from sentiment. And thanks for asking a question. And for the rest of the audience, of course, if anything's unclear, just ask the question in the chat. So I think maybe mentions is more or less sort of the obvious one, and we can move on from that one to the next topic. And that one being is that you don't only really look at your own content when you're doing this. Like the listening part expands far beyond just your own community, right? You're looking at your competitors, you're looking at the industry overall, maybe even other industries or some other, let's say, topic areas that your audience may be interested in, right?
And now it's not like you go beyond even the industry as well. You also need to follow the official channels, for example, who's launching some, who's posting some information, reliable information that you need to pick up very fast. So you need to add these pages as well on your list of the things that you follow daily or just on a constant basis.
Yeah. And just a proof that we do it at Social Baker, so that I have, and I'm not a community manager, but I do have a feed set up to monitor all our competitors' content. It's like just a daily check-in on where, like what's happening on their feeds. And we have a question coming in from the audience that maybe is worth answering. And Mamdou, I'm sorry for butchering your name, but thanks for asking a question. What is the best strategy of dealing with negative comments? Sometimes it seems an attack. So if a comment is an attack, Sarma, how do you deal with it?
It really depends on the comment in question, because negative comments have also like a huge variety. Just yesterday, I had to delete a comment which was negative, but it also had very bad language in it. So kind of that's a no-brainer. But usually, what is advised and what we try to do is that even if somebody is saying something bad about our company, we try to show our human side, to say, oh, we're sorry, and try to explain or try to dig deeper and understand what is the issue, to get to the bottom of this and try to try to solve it in a way. And with negative comments, I would really say that being human, instead of being really, really, really robotic and showing that you don't care, it could be beneficial in the long run, especially now that we're talking about brand loyalty. That it's the key marketing strategy of our times.
Do we mind if we maybe pause to answer another question from Raitha? So her question is like, can we elaborate a little bit more here on how to effectively track competitor content and trends such as hashtags or by certain keywords? So maybe this is a good time to kind of maybe walk through a little bit of how we do it at Social Bakers and what's available in our platform. Elisa, is there something that you'd be comfortable
Yeah,
sharing?
absolutely. I can explain, and surely we can reach out to you on a later on and actually show you how exactly it's done, maybe run a trial for Social Bakers so you'll try it for yourself. However, to effectively track competitor content, we have an amazing tool called Content Hub, where exactly you can have absolutely everything streamlined in one place. All the social media channels of yours and your competitors, and you can filter those up by the search options that you have set. So Content Hub makes it very easy to find and track exactly what you're looking for. And definitely the hashtag, this is something different because it refers to listening, and it's sort of a passive listening, and I would say that it's quite shallow if you just take listening as one and only source of truth. So you definitely need to combine those, and in our platform we have a separated listening tool that have pretty much the same listening capabilities like everybody else. However, the Content Hub is your place to go if you really want to drill down of performance of your competitors and to actually find exactly what you need, because sometimes it's not really easy.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks for that summary. Just to add maybe to it, what I kind of track personally is, so I have a feed for every competitor. I just have their pages added essentially. And I have I kind of check for sentiment trends, and especially if I see positive sentiment in certain, let's say, on certain subjects for a competitor, then I think like, okay, how can we take that and make it a part of our strategy? Obviously, their audience, we share the same audience to some degree. So how can we extract what they're doing and make it applicable to us? And that actually brings us to the next question, is like, our next point is that all of this listening that you do it, like Elisa, like you just said, there's no point in doing it if you're just like collecting this data and you're just actively kind of pulling all the information, but you don't know exactly what to do with it. And it's important to really connect with all teams that could be using this data to improve the customer experience, whether it's from the kind of the content you're creating, or maybe the products you're creating, or maybe there's something that your competitors are actually failing in that you could substitute that need for the audience. So it's important to make that data actionable. We actually have a lot of questions coming in that I think maybe we have to get to.
Yeah, honestly, like a lot of them is a matter of proper discussion with our account executives, who can reach out definitely, and probably they will, because it's a part of the game. Yeah. However, yes, especially the comment from Zubair, if I'm saying it correctly, I'm very sorry if I don't. Does Social Bakers offer social media listening? How is your Content Hub different from social media listening? Well, really different, to be honest, because first of all, social media listening, it's an information coming just from Twitter, because if anybody else states that they have social media listening, from different sources, that's probably not really accurate. And most of the listening comes from the Twitter itself. And it's quite different from Content Hub, which is a tracking of the competitor pages and having entire posts of what they're posting in one unified feed. So like, honestly, this is something just for the demo, because you will understand it instantly of what's the value behind the Content Hub once you will see it, and you will understand why listening is in our offering. However, this is really something that, like, when I was working with this, like, I was not relying on listening, because it gives you this much information and it's not actionable. You don't really know what to do with this if you don't have all the proper tools in place.
Yeah, and then there's a kind of people are asking a lot of questions about this part of the product, so maybe I'll just show, like, there's as well the inspiration, obviously, part of it that allows you to track even obviously topics, but as well it allows you to track trends, if I understand correctly, Elisa.
Absolutely. You can not only trends, you can see the most performing content now in the world, because the database is just endless. And if you're looking for the top performing content in your particular industry, you can add hashtags over there. You can add so many filters over there, which is making it very helpful for your team to do a successful copy pasting, let's say, and to actually find the best pieces of content over there that you can implement for your strategy. However, it's also very important, because listening, again, this is very narrow. And when we're talking about inspiration, you can see like entire area of content in the world, and you can see what's the latest trends, and you can go through them and you can filter those out. And this is very important when you're, like, especially in times like this, when you're trying to stay on the top of every conversation, and you need to change the tone of your discussion very rapidly, because sometimes one day is too late. And you need to be aligned with the audience, and you need to be on the top of discussion. And inspiration in this particular case, and I bet Sarma can confirm that, it was a tremendous help to understand, like, what is discussion now? What is the change of the mood in general? Yeah.
I'm sorry that my internet is just slightly slow. I realized that by opening this tab.
I would love to talk about Content Hub more and more, because it's one of my favorite parts of the tool. However, I think we should go back to the presentation. And please, if we have all your questions, and if it's product related, we don't want to be a preachers of the product just right now. So we will come back to all of you and show you exactly how it works and how you can benefit from those.
Yeah, and people asking if we can have a separate session on the Content Hub.
Yes.
So we definitely can. And if the team can, maybe if someone can navigate to find the previous webinar we run on Content Hub and maybe drop it in the chat. I think it's on YouTube. It could be helpful. And I think there was another question that, Sarma, for you. So if the same person keeps sending bad stuff, do you ban them? I think this is a quick one.
It really depends. As Elisa said, we don't want to be preachers here, because there's no right or wrong way to do something, especially on community management, because essentially, as we mentioned, community management is the mirror of your brand values. And if you feel like that you want to do it, you do it. If you want to try to find a different solution, or avoid the person, or keep responding to the person, you have to make a decision and just act upon it.
Yeah.
It really largely depends. We will talk about a similar topic as we move into the more active part of the presentation, I understand.
Okay, so the engagement part of it, each section will have a takeaway slide, which kind of you can return to when the deck is shared, and just go through these questions and see if you're on the right path in this area. And so the engagement part, and this is the part that is essentially where the excitement begins, because this is where you get to, as a brand, connect with real people. And of course, it's very much about the tools you use for that to make that happen. It's about a lot of the tools that we already discussed that, Sarma, you're using, but maybe you want to go over this in more detail. And of course, the slide is going to be there, and you can kind of go back and see in the presentation later what practically you're able to resolve with social bakers, but we kind of want to move on maybe a little bit in the discussion. So,
Yeah.
the goal of this is, of course, more than just good service, Sarma, but tell us, what is it then?
Yeah, as with everything in business, you really have to understand what the goal is before you start acting upon it. I know that for some companies, community management is, strictly client or customer service, where the main goal is to provide fast answers to, clear the backlog as fast as possible. For some companies, the brand value is being positive, open, and friendly. So that will be showed in the community management as well. But here I'd like to highlight a point that we kind of touched already, that community management is not only responding to messages. It's not buying or having a plant and you just water it and hope you'll get a really nice garden. It's kind of planting the seed there as well. And as we move further, then obviously we hear all the time and everywhere in studies, blogs, lectures, everyone's saying that social media is changing the community kind of industry as such, right?
Yeah,
And
the way
I would say that for me, the biggest kind of the biggest point here is that, for example, press conferences, they basically do not exist anymore, because the information flow from brands, from CEOs, from people is 24/7. At any given point in the day, somebody can reach out to you and ask a question, and you have to be responsive, and you have to interact with media, with fans, with partners, with basically everyone on social media around the clock.
Yeah, and it's essentially kind of, I like this point that you made, that it's your community management became the mirror of your brand, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the last point that I really like from you, Sarma, I think you put this down, is that there's really just two people that in the organization that have to really believe in what you do, and that's Sarma, that's you, and some of the salespeople that probably may get back to some of you, I see, with the questions later.
Yeah, definitely, because it is very difficult to continue kind of being the advocates, being the ambassadors, or continue saying the really positive things about your company if you don't really believe in the product. So that is a huge plus if that is happening. And I have to admit, I love the Social Bakers Suite. Yeah, it's working out nicely. But another point here is that the social media people or the community managers, they're front lines all the time, and seeing all the conversations around the company and the brand. You really have to understand everything that's happening within the company to be able to answer correctly and in a fast way.
But how do you do that human side with the templates, Sarma? So so we established that sometimes templates are just a huge save, and especially if you have something like 80 messages a day, you will have to use templates, and especially during a time of crisis, you'll have to use templates sometimes. How do you make them work?
With templates, it is really tricky, because when you write the templates, it's usually you write to an imaginary customer or respond to an imaginary person. So when you write the templates, you have to be as sincere as generally possible. And when using the templates, you really have to see and adapt towards the situation, because you can ask one question in 50,000 different ways, but the question will stay the same. And if you use a template that doesn't really match the question, you should tweak a bit or rewrite a bit or add the person's name and something like that. And this is if we talk about instant messaging or direct messages. But if we talk about comments and tweets, it is I would say it is a bit of a different story, because I can share what's happening here at Social Bakers, that every so often on Twitter, somebody shares our blogs and they tag us. And how do you think how it would look like if I would just answer, "Thanks for sharing this. Thanks for sharing this." Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing this. It would kind of lose the thought behind it, actually thanking someone, because you can see that I'm not being sincere at all.
Yeah.
So you really have to put some thought into it, or have some different templates for the same situation so you can swap them up. But if you are blessed enough to have enough time and not have a huge backlog, I would really say typing some short messages, especially if you answer the comments, that would be the essence of doing community management successfully, because then you can also continue the conversation, or just, really act upon depending on what the person is saying, or asking some more questions, etc., etc.
Absolutely. And it actually comes together like with a very nice question from Anas. Sometimes we receive a lot of useless messages and we don't want to tackle it at all. But how to track the important ones among all of these useless messages in order to avoid missing any important queries? The thing is, like, I would greatly disagree here. I don't think there are any useless messages incoming, because in the end of the day, yeah, it might be hard to answer all of them, especially if you need to come up with a fresh reply every time. I do believe that there are a lot of messages which are not really having any sense in it. But from the position of the metrics and from the position of performance of your post, every message that you answer is pretty much putting you in a better position, like in the face of the Facebook, Instagram, Twitter algorithms. So don't shy away from any responses that you have on social media, because absolutely there are important ones that you can pretty much label. For example, as you can do this in Social Bakers, you can label those as important and send it directly to the people who are supposed to respond to those. But I would definitely come up, like, if I were working 24 hours per 7, like, I would definitely reply every freaking message I can get, just because this is how my numbers are going up, and this is how I pay less for advertising in the end of the day. So it's not separate at all. Like, when you look at this in the reporting afterward, you actually see the numbers and you understand how exactly, like, answering the messages influence your key metrics.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's really about being socially devoted. You put the social in social media.
Sarma, how do you get through the tough times? So obviously, you have to somehow be consistent in your messaging, but it's so difficult to be 100% consistent one day to the next as a person. Sometimes some days are just harder.
Yeah, that definitely is true. Some days are harder than others, and you deal with a lot of things, not only in work, but also your private life. Me personally, when I do community management, I try to kind of zone out.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned I do community management early in the morning, and we don't receive a huge number, like huge inbound. We don't have it, so I have the option to really tackle the messages in the morning, then midday, and before I log off. But the thing that for me personally really helps is really splitting work life and private life, so to say. I have a company laptop, I have a company phone where I have all the messaging apps or just all the platforms set up. So it is easier to split it that way. So it's also easier kind of to split your I wouldn't say split my mood, but don't let an angry message from your family don't let something like that really ruin your mood and then make you mean towards your community.
I don't know how you do it, Sarma.
You can't be mean. I never seen you. I cannot imagine you being mean.
Yeah. But there's just so many good questions coming in the chat. I'm sorry if we can get through all of them. One point we've taken is that we need to cover social media listening in future webinars. So we'll get to that, we promise, and more content on that. And there's a question on brand advocates. How do you build brand advocates, and how do you keep them loyal to the brand? And I think community management and kind of engaging with those brand advocates is just crucial for people who re-engage with your brand regularly.
Definitely.
So yeah, community management, obviously easier with the right tools. I think we already briefly shown maybe the platform, so we don't need to dive into it again and rather get for the third section of this presentation, right?
Well, it's just like absolutely necessary to understand that to keep your community managers sane, you need to have something in place. It might not be social bakers. There are plenty of tools. But the thing is, if they're doing this natively, these people are probably going for a very long vacation after all of this is over. And you just need to have something in place to help them to automate the things that can be automated and to make them concentrate and be human where it's needed.
Yeah, so we'll skip the slide as well. It's going to be there in the deck. And of course, with every section, we include a couple of kind of takeaways from the section and the questions you should be asking yourself, and they will lead you towards improvement. And maybe this kind of leads us into the actually the last section, is that section about having oversight of your entire performance and having ability to measure effectiveness. And that's this is maybe a very abstract image, but it's having control of your community. And I think this, Elisa, you added this point here, and I think it's a really crucial one, is that community management, and Sarma, you already mentioned it again and again, that it has become such an integral part of the business because it's one of the points through which people now interact with your brand. Maybe in the past there were multiple different ways, but it has become integral to some degree. It has replaced conferences, even, he said.
And the thing is, let's be honest about this. Not all the business is going to recover after what situation we're facing right now, and only the businesses with the very strong support of the community will come back less damaged, let's say, because if you have advocates backing you up and people ready to communicate, not even like buying from your brand, but communicate with your brand on a daily basis in your social media, these are very loyal people that, I'm sorry, it's gonna sound horrible, but you can use in order to recover after whatever crisis hit your boat, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting how many people are coming back with the same question in the chat. That is just, there's sometimes some people that just keep asking the same question again and again and again, and you just politely, I don't know, Sarma, like you just politely do the same reply again, or you just slightly reinvent yourself.
Shuffle the words, you know.
I mean, you know, you need to have some fun. Sometimes you start like telling jokes to them because you understand, like, regardless of what you answer, they will come back with the same stuff. So as I said, we can't make a decision for anyone's brand. You really have to weigh out the things. If you speak with your manager and you ask, like, is it okay that we start ignoring people that are super annoying? They say yes, I mean, go for it.
Yeah. There's another interesting comment coming from Casey. Thanks for joining. And the comment is, wearing different hats is something that we keep filtering down to our community managers in training. How do we communicate the same traits to our copywriters who have been writing similar copy across brands? And maybe this may be an agency scenario, but I head up the content team, and we have to write for so many different kind of types of different purposes. And one thing that really helps is having style guide for all those different kind of types of communication. So like obviously for email marketing would be a slightly different tone as opposed to your website copy, or imagine, and again, community becomes one of the channels and where you kind of want to give some direction, and having some set rules helps. Of course, you have to be flexible within those rules.
And may I also add that here, doing community management or just in general, it really helps that all the people share the same values, like the brand values. So it really helps.
Yeah, that's a good point. Couple of signs that it's maybe not working as it should efficiency-wise is, that maybe you're lacking context of how many comments are addressed, how many unaddressed, what kind of queries are you getting? Are you aware of, are there product errors versus some kind of an issue with payment happening? How many of those are you aware of those? Are you able to understand which team members are performing maybe better than others? Can you learn from how they're managing their community and implement that to other parts of the team? We're not going to go through every one of these, but these are there to follow it. So Alisa, a question to you maybe. Can you measure response time and response rate on social bakers?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, that's basic, right? But also things that's supposed to be in reporting as well, which is crucial for you to understand how are your communities performing, is set the reporting frequency and to compare the latest results over and over again, how you're doing against yourself in the previous set of time. Put all the results in a context of the published content and global trends, which is also very important because you might receive responses not to what you posted, but to actual latest news on the TV. And if you don't have this somewhere in your report, that might really be lost, and be dragged out of context. Sorry. Obviously, fairly benchmarking your agents' performance to spot the gaps. Before we were asking, is there multiple agents in your organization? We have pretty a lot of organizations like that. And obviously, all of these people are working on a different timeline. They all have the different bank holidays and etc. So, for example, in social bakers, you can pretty much set the working hours and so on. So when you do the report in a later stage, it's kind of filters out all those things. So, for example, Sarma was not working on Friday. I hope you didn't, because we had a bank holiday and somebody else on the other side of the world was working. So in order to make it equal and fair and to really highlight the best performing agents, you need to keep these things in mind because it's important. Obviously, label your conversation to have the automation process. For example, if you know that you receive huge amount of comments, I don't know, about Content Hub, for example, you create a label, you attach this label to all the comments about Content Hub, and later on when you report on those and you see that this is the best performing question that you have on your channels, obviously you would like to create more posts about this. Obviously you would like to create maybe answer templates and the variety of those in order to tackle these questions faster and easier. And of course, around sentiment analysis to identify the spikes in conversation, because this is absolutely crucial.
Right, yeah. So obviously this is just a preview of what it kind of looks like when you have a dashboard. We don't want to take the time to go into the platform. I think we're a little bit short on time, and we really, really want to get to a couple of audience's questions before we end. So there's again a slide for you to go over the key areas and ask key questions that can lead you to improvement. I think just to summarize, the last bit is that who made this analogy? Alisa, was it you or was it Sarma?
No, it was Sarma. It was Sarma's.
Did I say that? Well,
I don't know.
I think it's
no, but it's definitely that community management. It's such an important layer of the cake, and without it, it would just not be the same. And that's not an analogy; it's a freaking truth, because this is how it is. And without community management, without properly handling the things, and without being human and fence-facing, you will just not win it. You will not win the loyalty of these people, and loyalty means pretty much a survival in this current state of events. It's highly important.
Yeah, and I hope that loyalty actually stays, and it's like we continue valuing customer loyalty as a top priority, and that's where community management becomes integral.
Absolutely. I mean, in the end of the day, all sales effort will come in vain if the client come and go. So the only money that you will actually make constantly is the people who's loyal to your brand and stay with you forever, for years. And this is how business works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe before we run out of time, and we started a little bit late, so we're gonna give a few minutes to answer the audience's questions. Thanks everyone for being so active in the chat. One thing that it does for us, if it gives us guidance of what kind of topics to cover later. And thanks for joining, Victoria. Thanks for joining, Raita, who I they have to log off. But if anyone has a question, let's answer them. Let's shoot us the difficult ones. And are there any questions in the Q&A? Because I'm unable to see them now.
If you have to run, just type your question, and our representative is gonna come back to you about this. Just don't hesitate, shovel off like all the questions that you have, so we can help you with those.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we'll be seeing you in future webinars. We'll be doing them regularly from our living rooms.
Hopefully soon.
Welcome home.
So do the, office tour maybe. I'm really, really missing our office. It's such a wonderful place.
Yeah, I do miss our office, but I'm also happy to invite everyone to my living room.
Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of wine there, right?
Yeah, that's a famous living room.
Yeah. So Raita still has a question. My question on the competitor content and tracking sentiment remains to be answered. And yes, we will reach out to you and we will show you exactly how we can do that in the SourceBakers platform. So Zubair, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. I would like to know more about social media listening. Mm-hmm. You will find out about it. We'll definitely let you know exactly how it works in our platform. We'll get in touch with you after this webinar. I think we have your contact details.
Great.
Okay, so if we are not receiving any more questions, thanks to everyone for joining. We can't wait to see you again.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. And thank you for all these comments. It was a really lovely conversation, and this is how it's supposed to be.
It was really like doing community management real time.
Yeah, it did feel like community management. Agreed. All right. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.